I speak to dentists that are thinking about making that big step. I always tell them, make sure the time, start planning early, start thinking about it way before. And there are things you can plan for, things you can see, is it going to be right for me in 2 years or 3 years? It's not too early to start planning for sure.
But I think that's the key to a great partnership, right? Is finding complementary skill sets that truly elevate each other. We could deliver all the patients in the world. If you don't have the ability to connect with that patient, build a relationship, ultimately provide that care, what a waste. And vice versa.
Welcome back to the Apex Perspective. I'm your host, Matt Hale, here with my co-host, as always, David Lohmann. Most dentists spend years inside their practice, making decisions, solving problems, and building systems. And over time, that closeness can make it harder to see what's actually working and what's not. Things start to feel harder than they should, patterns build over time, and it's not always clear why until something shifts your perspective. Today, we're talking through that concept with Dr. Jonathan Sanderson. Dr. Sanderson, it's great to have you on.
Thank you. It's an honor. Appreciate you having me.
We're excited. It's always fun to spend time with you. So thanks for doing this.
For sure.
Well, maybe we'll start by just sharing a little bit about your background. You've got a really interesting story. So why don't you start at the beginning and tell us all about you?
Yeah. So I'll go back to college. I was trying to figure out, like a lot of college students, my place in this world, where I want to be, what do I want to do. And I decided to go into physical therapy. And my parents said, hey, why don't you consider, my mom worked for a dentist from the time I was third grade. She was, for 25 years after that. So she said, why don't you consider being a dentist? And I didn't think at the time I was near smart enough to be a doctor of any kind. And I remember to this day, she made the point, you've known Dr. Bausch. She worked for a guy named Dr. Bausch in Kingwood outside of Houston. And
Mhm.
to this day, I just, look up to the guy, love the guy. But I thought, she said,
Awesome.
you're as smart as he is. And I got to thinking, I was in college, of course. I was like, I am as smart as he is. You know what? I think I could be. I think I could do this. And so, and I wasn't near as cool as he was. That guy, he was like a semi-pro water skier and all. But I started looking at his life. I'm like, you know what? He's got time to do fun things. He owns his own business, which is important to
Mhm.
me. He got to
Yeah,
work with his hands and be involved in the community, and it just checked off a lot of boxes that I thought that I would enjoy. And
totally.
the very next Monday, that was on the weekend. The next Monday, I went to see the pre-professional advisor at Sam Houston, and he said, "Yeah, I think you'd be a good fit. Your grades are good, And
Yeah.
he put me in touch with the right folks, and so I applied and got into San Antonio, UT San Antonio. And so, yeah,
That's a great story. I think one of the interesting things I want to hear you talk a little bit about is your pathway into ownership. You had
yeah,
a pathway that I think was more common back then, partnering with the doctor, having that mentor that you ultimately became an owner in.
yeah,
That's obviously less common these days, but it still exists. But talk a little bit
right.
about kind of your early career coming into the industry and ultimately your pathway into practice ownership.
Yeah, so I went straight to the Air Force out of dental school, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I wanted to have a plan, and
Mhm.
I thought it'd be great to see the world a little bit for 3 or 4 years. But I knew I wanted to eventually settle down in the community and be part of a community and all the things I mentioned before. So at the 1.5, 2 year mark of my 3 year commitment, I sent letters to, I think, every dentist in Montgomery County and North Harris County. I sent 150 letters out thinking I would probably get, how it is, you send 150 out, I'll get 50 responses, I'll get 30 offers. I think I got 8 responses and 2 offers, and Dr. Preston Cutbirth was one of those, and so he and I, we met and had a lot in common, same sense of humor, and so he said, you can be an associate until your production equals my production, and then you can be a partner. And so that was in right before 9/11 in 2001. I remember I got out of the Air Force because he was referring out a ton of surgery
Hmm.
and a ton of endo and a lot of things I just really enjoyed. It didn't take long, and we were kind of on the same production level. And so January 1st of 2002, I became a partner of his, and the way we set it up was different too. It didn't, because we both trusted each other, even though we'd only known each other, a year or so at that time.
Gotcha.
We just said, look, no matter what, whoever does what, we'll just split profits 50-50.
Hmm.
And so we worked the same number of hours. We trusted each other to work hard while we were at work. And that way we're not fighting over every bridge that walks in the door. That you see
Yeah.
so many partnerships that just, it's almost like you set yourself up to share an office with your biggest competitor. and we
Right.
didn't want that. So I think that's one of the reasons our partnership lasted, over 20 years. And so it grew, and again, we just had a lot of fun growing the business over the next from 2002, I guess, to 2022. So
Well, and I think this is a good point that, to fill in some context here for what you guys ultimately built prior to, joining Apex. So, we're going to talk about some of the challenges of practice ownership and,
sure.
the roadblocks you incur. But I think it's very important to note that you guys built a tremendously successful four location group before ultimately affiliating those practices with Apex. Take us through some of that kind of evolution. When you added practice 2 and 3, ultimately de novoing practice 4, starting from scratch, which in its own right has become a wildly successful practice. So just
Yeah.
give us a little bit of, where from the time you joined, the single practice to where you guys kind of shifted this mindset. We're going to grow a group and become a multi-location office for our patients.
Yeah, so we always enjoyed the dentistry part, but we enjoyed, back then especially, we enjoyed the business side of it too. One of us read Rich Dad Poor Dad and shared it with the other one. And we both read, and so we both started thinking, what if we start thinking of ourselves as practice owners, even though we only own one practice,
Hmm.
instead of just dentists.
Hmm.
And so that was our first, I guess, paradigm shift into scaling and growing outside of who we were, is just instead of just getting paid, but trading your time for money, trying to scale it into maybe more dentists, more locations possibly in the future. But that was around 2006, 2007. We got a good opportunity to purchase a practice about 15 minutes from our location in 2012. And so
Okay.
that was in Tomball, which was about, like I said, about 15, 20 minutes south. And it's that's when you learn how little you know, when you have your second location from your first location. At least we did. It's a humbling experience. And so
Yes.
we kind of plodded along because here's what we thought. We thought we'd add the second location. We'd bring our systems to that location. We'd change everything in that location because, we were the ones buying. So we obviously knew better than anyone how to run a practice, right? And it couldn't have gone any worse for the first 6 months. I wish we had had it to do over again and not made so many changes so quickly. But we were trying to put systems in place and that kind of thing, which is good on its face. But it came for a lot of challenges later because they
Yeah.
didn't necessarily want to change how they were doing things. And
I think
so, go
I
ahead.
think a second location is interesting for a lot of dentists that it is both a humbling experience, but also
Right.
probably somewhat confidence building in that it forces you to realize that perhaps a lot of your success you had in the original practice was actually because of you. And that's hard to replicate with, an
So
associate doctor in another
right.
location. So
Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested in how'd you guys ultimately end up dividing your time? Did you split time between the practices rather than this idea that we'll have a second one and it'll just start to create some additional profit for us? How did you ultimately address the challenges you faced in those first 6 months?
Well, we knew initially we would need an associate. We need a third dentist. And
Hmm.
so I thought, you know what? I've been here less time. Dr. Cupworth he went to high school in Magnolia. He was a Magnolia guy. And so he was going to
Hmm.
stay there full time. I thought instead of both of us going back and forth, why don't you stay here full time? I'll do 2 days in Magnolia, 2 days in Tomball. And our associate can also swap with me those 2 days. And that worked pretty well. Once the waves settled down and things got a little more calm after the first or second year,
Yeah.
it got better. But it was going from 1 to 2 was challenging. We had our first associate, and we didn't know how to manage an associate. He was pretty brand new right out of an AHED program, and
Hmm.
so he was good. He was an excellent dentist, but it was a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and being gluttons for punishment, you ultimately decided to bring on a third partner and add a third
Right.
location. How far into kind of your time and your partnership with Dr. Cutbirth was that decision made?
Yeah, no, good question. It took about 5 years for us to raise enough money to say, "Oh, feel comfortable, okay, going out and taking out another loan." We didn't want to do the bare minimum, we want to have a lot of equity in it when we bought it. So it took about 5 years to, get the capital together. It took about 5 years for us to forget. how big a pain it was. You know what I'm saying? It took us about 5 years to
Yep.
forget how bad it was the first time. And so
Uh-huh.
we got on a 5-year rhythm. In 2012, we had our second location. In 2017, we added one in Huntsville. And Huntsville is about an hour north of Houston
Mhm.
and was about an hour from each of those other two practices. So we didn't want an associate there. I didn't think it'd be fair to have him there the whole time. So we offered him a partnership and he took it and still there, as a matter of fact, doing really well. But
Yeah.
that's when we added Huntsville in 2017. And again, time goes by, you forget. Let's do a de novo this time because we figured that's going to be a lot easier, right? Because there's not a new culture to have to adapt to. There's not a new team that you didn't hire that you're inheriting, and it comes with its own. There's nothing that's easy as far as
Yes.
growing a dental business. But
You're right.
that
If
was
it
in
was easy, everybody'd be
2020.
doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? And so,
Uh,
after we would about 6 months after we do it, we're like the dog that chases the car and finally catches it, like, "Okay, great, what do I do now? No idea." And so a lot of learning on the fly, and then that was right in the middle of COVID, so the 4th location, the de novo started in 2022, but the dream of it,
Yeah.
the concept of it, started probably around 2020,
Yeah.
and so
You're sitting at home, locked during COVID, dreaming up, what your next
exactly, and
plans were.
that can be good and that can be dangerous,
That's
so
right.
that's when it got to the point where I
Mhm.
may be getting ahead of myself, so stop me. But that's when it got to the point where
Uh-huh.
we had 3 practices. We probably weren't good managers at that point of that many people in that many locations. We just were in over our head. Probably didn't realize it to the extent we should have. And we decided let's do a 4th one. We have plenty of patients here. The Magnolia practice was busting at the seams. Let's open up one close enough to kind of offload some of those patients we don't have room for in a
Yeah.
brand new practice in a growing part of Magnolia, just outside of the Woodlands. And we thought, that'd be a great idea. And so, and it was, but it just with COVID, that's about when COVID hit, while we were building and finishing out, and that's when it became obvious. Like, look, we've got to do something. We're all, we're gonna we're gonna shorten our lifespan with these vets if we don't do something. So that's when that
Yeah.
all occurred.
That's
Yeah.
all really helpful context and appreciate you kind of taking us through that story. I think, for somebody listening, I think of some of the challenges that you faced are probably similar, whether you're a single location in a growing practice. You've got perhaps maybe more limited resources to throw at problems. As you
Right,
added practices, added locations, you might have grown your resources, but the problems also multiply. So,
right.
I'm sure it's similar, kind of regardless of what path you take. But one of the things I know Matt talks a lot about is this concept of are you working in your business or are you working on your business? And
Right.
one of the things that I think is a challenge for dentists is that they are wearing so many hats as practice owners that you get so stuck working in the business. You're putting out this fire and then this fire and this fire and seeing that patient and dealing with this staff issue. Talk us through some of the challenges you faced, and as things got busy, where did you see the cracks start to form? And again, it's not that clearly the business was successful, but
Right.
the what may have been easy when it was you and Dr. Cutbirth in a single location, what started to strain as your group grew?
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
question.
Feel like I ought to
Going back to
interject
what
and
you
just say
Yeah,
you're
for
you're
sure.
you're
Go
one
ahead.
of the most humble people I know. But this practice and this group overall was phenomenally successful. I don't want that to be undersold. What you built and how successful it was. So any successful business has challenges and has places to get better. Everyone I've ever been involved with has, but I don't want it to be lost on how successful the group was. It's a
No, no,
phenomenal
thank
growth
you, man.
story.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and paying the bills, to be honest, was never a problem. That's one thing I'm very thankful for. We didn't have the stress of, how we're going to make payroll. There
Yeah.
was always plenty of patients. It seemed like there were always plenty of new patients, just from where we were fortunate to be in a very, fast, rapidly growing area.
Hmm.
But the stress was, and we had a great team. We didn't have bad team members. I can't think of a single I mean, maybe one or two over the course of a long period of time. But when Susie would, for example, you have a financial coordinator at a location that you're only there 2 days a week, and she's the one person who knows how to collect money and deal with insurance companies, and she puts in her 2 weeks. Well, you don't have a system to replace her at all. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have you don't only have to replace her, you have to train someone to do her job all within 2 weeks, or you're
Yeah.
just scrambling. And so that's just a microcosm of all the many things that could happen. But a lot of it was staffing, and it was good teams, but you have turnover, and we didn't have a training program in place. We didn't have a recruiting process in place. When we were small, it was, hey, um, I just got waited on at Applebee's and she was great, great personality. Let's talk to her about training as an assistant. That was our system. And then we got
Sure.
a little more sophisticated, but not much. And as we got bigger, it was
Yeah.
just hard to replace good people. And that creates an overwhelming amount of stress because we're also bent toward, as dentists, we're just bent toward doing the clinical side. We enjoy the dentistry. That's what I'm
Mhm.
good at.
Mhm.
So I don't want to spend 2 hours a day dealing with anything other than just crown preps and fillings and extractions. That's what I want to be doing. And so there's a lot of tension there as at least with us as we got bigger. That created a lot of stress, and my business partners kind of felt the same way.
I wonder that you probably the first couple times you went through those, you felt like those were, temporary challenges that you were going to get over. Was there a point where that became a pattern that you kept seeing, and you started to feel like something needed to change?
Exactly. You feel like if we could just get this spot filled, get the right person on the right seat and this seat on this bus, and then we're
Mhm.
gonna be fine, and the waters are gonna calm down, and we'll just be rolling again. We get this settled
Yeah.
down. But then another thing would hit you, and we
Yeah.
had three locations at the time with 48 employees, and it just got to be wave upon wave of issues, and
Yeah.
so and we, like I said, we weren't. As the business was doing, if you just look at the numbers, you'd think we were just cruising, but it was like, the ducks that they're floating across the pond,
Yeah.
no problem, but they're
Right.
kicking like hell underneath the surface of the
Yeah.
water.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of how we
Uh-huh.
felt, right?
Sure.
So,
Sure.
yeah. So yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It was wave upon wave, and finally, we had enough.
Yeah.
Can you think of, and maybe the answer is no, it's just a compounding effect as you talked about, but is there a point in time that you and your partners looked around and said, look, we've built something great, but this is harder than it should be at this point. And I don't see a pathway to that changing with kind of where each of our focuses are. Was there a specific incident, a point in time, or was it just something that kind of continued to grow over time as you guys started to think about, look, we've built this, and it's now we're ready for a partner that can help take it to the next level.
Well, originally, I think we met with Apex originally around 2017. There was a dinner I think y'all
Mhm.
hosted at Capitol Grill in Houston.
Yep.
2017, 2018. I may be getting the year wrong. So, but as time went by, that just wasn't a good time for our families, where everybody was, the ages and everything. As time went by, we reached a point where, number one, our family dynamic is in a stage where we're okay. Let's at least explore this idea, and then number two, COVID hit, which I think affected everybody and just added stress to every office, whether you were, 4 or 5 employees in one location or no matter how big you were. And we were no exception to that for sure. Melanie Ivy was our director of operations. She handled all things non-clinical. Brilliant lady, very smart. She started out as a entry-level hygiene coordinator when we had one location, and she's one of those folks. There was just never a job that we could promote her to that she couldn't handle. So
You need 10
she it
more of
didn't
her.
exactly. Yeah, right. If I could clone her, I would have. And but she decided she wanted a career change, and she didn't give us 2 weeks. She gave us, she goes give several months because she knew she would be hard to replace. And but she bought a music venue in the Hill Country, and she's
Oh,
there
wow.
doing well with that to this day and loving it. But that would have been after COVID because I remember she helped us through COVID, but that would have been probably 2021, sometime around that time frame,
Mhm.
and maybe late 2021. And I knew she would be. That's when I think that was probably, you're asking for one tipping point or one incident that said, look, I'm tapping out.
Mhm.
That would have probably been it.
Mhm.
That would
Well,
have
it's
probably been it.
interesting. We, as an organization, our model is set up. We really only partner with successful doctors, successful practices. And so a lot of these relationships, as reference, they start sometimes many years before actually affiliating with Apex.
Yeah.
And I do think that, look, there's success and it always feels like maybe, hey, we're just one tweak away from getting to
Right.
that easy place, but we often hear that sometimes there's just this tipping point that goes, hey, I do need a partner now. It's less fun
Or
maybe
want.
than it used to
Right.
Yeah.
be, or want a
Yeah.
partner now.
Yeah.
It's less fun, and I want to get back to what I really enjoy about dentistry. And I hope that that's something that you've experienced, and I think it's something that Matt and I pride ourselves on, and get really excited about when we can help doctors rediscover that. But
Yeah.
it's a great. I appreciate you sharing that kind of perspective and the story of what ultimately led to, hey, we're ready for a partner.
Yeah.
Talk us a little bit through. You had three partners plus your two partners plus yourself in your
Right.
business.
Right.
Really, three different ages or points in your career, which can be
Right.
challenging for partnerships when it comes to exploring the right timing for partnership. What
Right.
might be right for the oldest partner may be very different than the younger partner had kind of envisioned,
Yeah.
and that middle partner, maybe somewhere in between. But talk us
Mhm.
through a little bit about the ultimate decision to start exploring partnerships and kind of how you guys started to think about what the right partner looked like for what you were trying to achieve.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. For all of us as dentists who still own 100% of our practice and control everything, a lot of it is just fear of the unknown. As much as I don't like where I am now, at least I know everything I know what it is I'm going through.
Yeah.
But if I partner, that's an irreversible decision, right? Once you partner with someone, you can't get it back. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of dentists they just don't want to take that next step out of fear. And so we were that way too a little bit, and you talk to a lot of different dentists, and I talked to some folks who had partnered with different DSOs, and most of the stories were negative, and most of them were like, don't do it, just you'll regret it, and all this other stuff. So, but I knew I had a good relationship, especially with Ben. Ben and I talked, every 6 months to a year for the last few years, just kind of stayed in touch, see how we were, how y'all were doing, especially through COVID and
And
everything.
that's
And
Ben Willoughby, our
Ben
senior vice
Welby,
president of business
y-
development. Yep. Okay.
yes, and we're good friends to this day. But I didn't want to necessarily. Um, I felt like what I knew about Apex is we shared at least the same values, right? And
Hmm.
so, as far as being pro doctor, pro patient, long term relationships between the doctors and the patients, you don't get that with a lot of the groups out there. And I wasn't in a position where I could interview 50 different groups either. I didn't know how to find them. I didn't know, a lot of dentists don't know where do I go to look to talk to a lot of different DSO opportunities. And so, but I knew Ben, I knew we shared the same values. And
Yeah.
I thought, I talked to my partner, let's just reach out to them and see if we can, make a deal, make a win-win for both sides.
Yeah.
Sure.
So now, kind of coming towards present day, what's changed about your day to day? What does a typical day look like, now versus before?
Yeah, there's just a lot less it's a lot less to worry about outside of the 8 to 5. You see your patients, and I mean, I sound like a commercial for every DSO I've ever talked to, and they all promise this, and I can't
Yeah.
speak for any of them, but with Apex, who I'm with, but it's just I go to work, I see my patients, I do what I'm really good at, and the things that I'm not good at that I did for way too long,
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with anymore. The marketing and the personnel, the HR, the regulations, the taxes, all the accounting, all that stuff,
Yeah.
It's just not a part of my life anymore. And I really don't think about work much, after I leave on Friday. So
It's an interesting point. If you go back to the very beginning of your origin story of partnering with Dr. Cutbirth, you mentioned there was things he didn't do that you really enjoyed doing, and
right,
why that mesh in kind of complementary skill sets, not the same skill set,
Yeah.
complementary skill
right.
sets, really ended up being a great partnership for the two of you, both in your initial practice and ultimately growing to 4 locations. We think of it as similar. I mean, Matt and I would
Yeah.
probably be terrible seeing patients.
Yep.
Maybe our marketing team would be terrible, interacting with a patient as they come through the practice. But as an organization grows in scale, and both some things that you were able to witness when you grew your team prior to joining Apex, but certainly we have on our team as well as these people who spend all day every day on this particular subject matter, whether that's, you know, finance and accounting or IT or marketing. It
Right.
just allows you to wear one hat versus multiple. But I think that's the key to a great partnership, right? Is finding complementary skill sets that truly elevate each other. I mean, we could deliver all the patients in the world to your
Yeah.
practice. If you don't have the ability to connect with that patient, build a relationship, ultimately provide that care, what a waste. And vice
Right.
versa.
Right.
Having somebody that can build a long term relationship, but man, no support to get you that opportunity, also not going to be long term success.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I just talked to a good friend of mine who's a plastic surgeon in Dallas,
Mhm.
and he's considering doing the same thing I did in 2022. Like he's kind of had enough of the business side of it. He can't decide what he owns 6 or 8 different med spas around town too. He's got a pretty big group, and he didn't want to pull the trigger. Was asking me my opinion and how it went. And I said, look, you're going to get better. However good you are now as a technical surgeon, you're going to get better at that when you turn loose of all this other stuff. I know my dentistry, my clinical skills have improved. I didn't do a single Invisalign case, never wanted to before 2022. And I've been practicing. I graduated in 97. And so that's a long time, but
Yeah.
now I have time to learn new things. Now I have time to focus on that because I'm not trying to do accounting and HR and all the things I'm not having to. And so now I
Yeah.
had time to take on that. And I've gotten better at nearly every clinical skill I feel like that I have over the last few years because I've just had more time to focus. It's just about where your focus can be.
One of the things that I'm most impressed with during our partnership and in you specifically is the team that you've been able to build in your individual practice.
Mhm.
Your practice name does not show up on our recruiting spreadsheet very often. You have built very loyal team. You've empowered people. People, run through brick walls for you, and I think that obviously is reflected in who you are, reflective of who you are as a person, but reflected in the ultimate patient outcomes as well.
Yeah.
The success of your practice. How much do you think kind of freeing the mind up of all that other stuff has allowed you to focus on really driving success among your team as well? I mean, is that part of what that partnership has ultimately allowed you to do?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. First of all, I've been blessed with really, really good teams everywhere I've been. But
Hmm.
the fact that I know the energy that I bring in every day, Monday at 8 o'clock, is much more consistently positive now than it was in, say, 2018, 2019,
Hmm.
um, when I was just under such a big stress load. And so I think when you're positive and you bring that positive energy to work, and you're also a leader, the way y'all have set it up, you don't just say, okay, you're dentist now, you don't own anymore, you're an employee, you're a W-2 guy. No, you set the dentist up with the office business managers to lead the team together. So from that standpoint, my role hasn't changed a lot as a leader. I don't
Mhm.
have all of the details and the micro stuff that I had to do before, but you still have that hat on. Okay, you're a dentist and you're a leader of your team. And my team right now is 6 ladies. They're all great. And I enjoy that aspect of it now more than ever because again, you can kind of focus on, okay, what's the overall? Where do we want to be? This practice is right here and right now. Where do we want to be? You've all got your talents. How can we use that together to get to here by the end of this calendar year?
Yeah.
And I think if you approach that in a way, people want to be part of a team. They want to be part of
Yeah.
a team that are trying to accomplish the same goal. They don't want to, it's not very motivating to say, okay, come into work every day so you can make your hourly rate and go home,
Yeah.
and there's
Right.
nothing bigger than that.
Right.
So I think dropping the old stuff that I don't have to do anymore, focus on the dentistry and the leadership aspect of it, with a really good attitude, I think it makes a big difference with your team.
Yeah.
As you've gone through this, Matt, jump in, but
Yeah. Go ahead.
what part of running a practice do you enjoy more now than you did previously? Especially as you guys grew, and there's parts of it I'm sure that became more of a burden than anything. But what aspects of running a practice, dentistry, leadership, whatever that is, that you've found some renewed excitement about or energy, since uh, taking on a partner?
It's it's hard to explain any one thing. I would equate it to, what's easier about riding a bike now that you've gotten over the mountaintop and you're on your way down. I
Yeah.
mean,
Fair.
the whole thing is so much easier because there's just less of it. There's just it's almost like I offloaded the aspects of running a business, a 4-location practice that I didn't like doing, and could focus now on the clinical, aspects of it, growing relationships with patients. Now that I'm in Colorado, I've been here 3 months. Every patient's a new patient, so I've got a whole new set of patients to grow relationships with. Leading the team is just everything about it's easier, so I enjoy it. I enjoy it more, but I can't think of one specific aspect that I enjoy more.
Yeah.
Now it's just all easier. We're going downhill instead of uphill, I feel like.
Well, and that you just introduced a important point to this conversation. So you built your group in North Houston, spent your entire career there for the most part. You called me up a year ago and said, "Hey, we're as a family, we're making a decision. We're going to move to Colorado." And I said, "Yep, and I want to keep you." And we were, so fortunate that you chose to stay with Apex. Talk a little bit about how that changed at 25 years into your career, has been for you as far as, look, that's a big change to start over, in a new practice, a new patient base, a new team, obviously same organization, but every practice is different. What sort of challenges and what sort of energy has that kind of infused back into you over the
Yeah.
last
Yeah,
few?
that's a good question too. We don't regret it for a second. We're glad we made the decision. It's a decision that was kind of I would call it a dream. 3 or 4 years ago, we were just dreaming of one day retiring to Colorado, living here. We prefer cold weather over hot weather,
Mhm.
dry over humid, less traffic over traffic. And Magnolia was a country town when I first settled down there with Dr. Cupworth in 2001.
Yeah.
Now it's not. Now you might wait
Yeah.
3 times for the same green light.
Right.
Yeah.
So we started thinking about, maybe moving somewhere further north and getting out of the humidity. And you obviously can't do that when you own a practice.
Hmm.
And so
Mhm.
yeah, we called Dave, like, Dave, we want to move north. Do you have anything? It could have been at the time I was not specific. I was like, it could be Tulsa, it could be Kansas City, anywhere in Colorado, just move us north somewhere. And it's one of those things that just really worked out. And so
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that I miss from back home, a ton of patients. I just some of them I miss every day. But other than that, and maybe Mexican food, there's not much about Houston that I miss.
That's great.
I mean,
That's
the weather and the traffic can go.
Well,
But
it's
yeah, here it's been great, and I'm getting settled in now, and Colorado has a lot of folks from Texas moving here, so I was
um,
worried, like, how are people going to treat me? I got my license plates changed as soon as I could, but everybody, even when they found out I'm from Texas, they've been really nice to me, so I appreciate that.
good. That's good.
well, it's good
Well,
to hear.
yeah,
Uh,
as you think back, you went through a 20 plus year process of building a group, or I guess 15
Mhm,
up until joining Apex, of
mhm.
building a group, building a practice first, building a group, bringing on a number of associate doctors, growing the team, obviously all those things. What do you look back and think that, I didn't recognize this at the time, but it was a challenge that we faced from the beginning, that, and I guess where I'm ultimately going is that somebody listening to this might also be facing in their practice, and just kind of advice you have for them as they think through their future. This is not intended to be an Apex commercial at all, but
Right,
just
right.
more, with a few years of ability to kind of look in the rearview mirror now. What do you think you've realized that was a challenge that you didn't realize at the time, that maybe has um, improved or allowed you to kind of shift your focus and be a better dentist, chairside each and every day?
Yeah, I think number one, when I speak to dentists that are thinking about making that big step, I always tell them, make sure the time start planning early, start thinking about it way before, and there are things you can plan for, things you can um, that you can see, is it going to be right for me in 2 years or 3 years? It's not too early to start planning for sure. Um, and unless you're ready to turn loose, some dentists, I know y'all might have experienced this, but some dentists have, it hasn't worked out because they didn't want to turn loose of anything. They thought they did,
Mhm.
but then they partner with a DSO, but they still get upset every time the DSO does anything that they would not have done had they, had been in the driver's seat. And
Sure.
it's probably not a good time for that person to have partnered to begin with.
Mhm.
Right.
And so I think the timing has to be right. Once you decide the timing is right, don't let find the right partner. That's another good one. Don't just take the highest bidder. The last thing I wanted to do was just put our group on the auction block, and then I'm married to the highest bidder who may not have
Yeah.
my best interest, or we don't share the same values. Who
Yeah.
knows? And
Sure.
so just do a lot of talking, interview a lot of people,
Yeah.
and then I think go for it, because I don't think if you take the necessary steps to plan and to do your homework, I don't think it's something you'll regret. We certainly haven't. I will add one more thing. Talking about going back to moving, it got real stressful when I had to tell the team, because I'm just in love with the team back in Magnolia. I miss them,
Yeah.
and they liked me a lot, and so I had to tell them, had to start telling patients at some point. And I
Yeah.
talked to my wife. I was like, I don't know how you. I don't know how you do this, we're trying to move mid career. And oh, by the way, I'm going to go inherit a whole new batch of patients that I've never
Yeah.
known. Dentistry is so easy for me right now, because working on patients you've known 10 years, you get the benefit of the doubt with them. They love you no matter what goes
Yeah.
wrong or what complications you. And so she said, well, just ask some of your friends who have done it. I was like, honey, nobody does. Nobody, dentists don't do this. Like they stay in one place until they get old and retire. I don't know
Yeah.
a single one who's just decided to move who didn't have a problem with the state board or something.
Yeah.
And anyway, but it's really worked out well. We're fortunate and we're thankful every day.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we so appreciate you taking the time and
Yeah,
coming
for
on and
sure.
sharing a little bit of your story. We're such big fans of you, and so appreciate the opportunity to partner with you and have you as part of the organization.
Well, the feeling's mutual, guys. Y'all have allowed me to do a lot of things I would not have been able to do otherwise, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
You bet. Well, thanks for the partnership and thanks for sharing your story. It's a good one. It's by every measure, a success story, and we're just really glad to be part of it. So thanks for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thanks for the privilege. I appreciate it, guys.
All right. Take care.
Take care.